Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar to talk about class and OpenLMS and our partnership. We have a very sort of exclusive audience, let's use that word, that is going to be showing up today because we only reached out to a certain group of companies out there that we wanted to talk to about this, because it's a special deal really that we're putting on the table here, and what we want to talk about is this partnership that OpenLMS and class have. While we're waiting for people to come in the room, and just give everybody a few minutes to sort of log in, and make sure that everybody can hear us, I want to introduce myself. My name's Ladek. It's my dearest and most sincere hope that you've heard of me before, but if not, no big deal. I host something called the eLearn podcast. I also am the host of something called the eLearn Success Series, and I work for this company here called OpenLMS. I'm always out there trying to find the best conversations around how we do online education better, how we do remote work better, etc. And as we have people coming in the room here, really, it'd be great to see if we have the ability to even see comments. Anyway, let me take us forward now, because we're already a couple of minutes past the hour now. And I want to set the stage here. Ultimately, the reason why we're here today is because, there is a problem out there. And the problem is that online learning has been happening, but one of the big problems that is out there is that, we've found a resistance to and a trouble with synchronous learning. That is the time, when an instructor and learners are in that, in that space together, in this online platform. And the question that we want to answer here today is it possible from, is it possible to shift this, this current perception that we have that the synchronous opportunity is dull, it's boring, it's unengaging? Is it possible to shift it to something that is engaging, is exciting, is intuitive, and something that you actually kind of want to show up to for both learners and instructors? So that's really the big question that we're seeking to answer here. And happily, as I'm foreshadowing here, the partnership between class and OpenLMS do make this happen, which is fantastic. But I'm not going to be the person to do it. I'm your host. I'm the person that's going to be guiding us through this conversation. And I'd like to introduce you to the individuals who are the experts in the field here. And I'm going to share my screen to do that, just so to make sure that we know who they are. One second. And we will push slideshow. And so, I'm here with Billye Atout, Ed Miller, Phill Miller, and obviously you see my little face down there as well. But, rather than me, butchering, their experience and their expertise and the depth of who they are, I'd like for each of them to sort of give us the 30 seconds about who they are. Billye, why don't we start with you? Tell us about who you are and what your position is.
Thanks, Ladek. Yeah, so I'm Billye Atout. I am the director for Australia, New Zealand class. I have actually been in the EdTech industry for over 20 years. In fact, Ed and I used to work together, and we've had the fortunate to be able to work together again. I've got 3 boys who are all in school-age kids, which keeps me very busy, but also gives me a lot of firsthand experience with online learning. I'm located here in Melbourne. Today we actually have some sunny weather, but as everyone knows, that can change very quickly.
Indeed. Ed Miller, tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Ed Miller. I lead strategy and business development at Class. Like Billye, I have over 20 years experience in educational technology and a content management company called Zythos that was acquired, and got to spend time with Billye and others at Blackboard, and most recently at NovoEd, focused on corporate learning and development technologies. And I live in beautiful Marin County, California. And like Billye, I have 3 sons. They're a little bit older than hers, but 3 sons nonetheless.
Nice. Phill, what about you?
Phill Miller. I'm the managing director at OpenLMS. I'm calling in from Indiana. where we actually have a sunny day today as well, but we're going the other way. It's getting colder, not warmer. And actually, I just returned back from Australia. I'm still jet lagged from Australia. I just flew back from Melbourne on Friday. So I'm still feeling the impact of that a little bit. If we're talking about kids, I have 4 kids, a 9-year-old son and triplets that turn 7 next Friday, which are a boy and 2 girls. So there's a lot of kids on this call. So good, interesting stuff.
I'm gonna, double down on the ante there too. I've got 3 kids too. I feel like 3's the new 2, which is fantastic. Phill, you've taken it to the next level there. And now that my whole platform's come into place, I see here, we've got, several dozen people in the room with us here. Before we really take hold and kind of move things forward as we're going along, I would love it if you just take a real quick moment to introduce yourself. Tell us, if you're willing, maybe what city you're dialing in from. I love that. I just show my age just like that. Boom. You're zooming in from, or, what institution or organization that you're from. That'd be great. Throw it in the chat there. Also, as we're going along, we encourage you to have real-time interaction with us. So if there's an observation, a challenge, a success, a question that you have, throw it in the chat. And, we're definitely going to have some Q&A at the end of this session. And then, we'll definitely, or if there's something really pertinent, we'll get to it as we go along. As we get started, I want to step back for a second because we're talking about synchronous learning here. We're talking about, online education. We're talking about this is, people expect, right? Online education. But I've heard, as I've done the podcast, as I've been in the success series, et cetera, from adult learners, from, people who are taking trainings in their corporations, other adult learners in higher ed as well, that they're just really excited to get back in person, right? So I'm wondering, as we're having this conversation, maybe we don't even really need to solve for this synchronous issue at all. And so, kind of what's the real story here? Ed Miller, you want to take that one first?
Well, that's absolutely true. And it's absolutely true that folks still want to work from home or learn from home. I mean, a recent McKinsey study quoted 58% of respondents actually have the opportunity to work at home once a day, and a third or over a third have the option to work from home as much as 5 days a week. It's really about the flexibility. What the pandemic showed is we truly can learn from anywhere if we can provide the right infrastructure. Now, during the pandemic, we had to use the infrastructure that was available, but more and more we can provide the infrastructure that really provides a in-class experience remotely. When it comes to working remotely, over half of Australian workers are working remotely at some time. And 50% actually stated they would consider quitting their job if their employer directed them to return to work full time. And it's understandable. We want that community and connection we get from going to work, but we've learned that all that commute time and the ability to have a little bit more flexibility in our schedule makes a tremendous difference in terms of the quality of life we all have.
And if you think about it from the higher education perspective, or even vocational education, RTOs, the vet sector, many of them want to go back to class, and there are times where that makes sense in person. But studies are showing that the proportion of students who really want pure online or at least hybrid is going up significantly. Cengage Learning did a digital pulse survey. They've done it every year for the last several years. 76% of students say they prefer, or they at least want to have the option to take a fully online course. That's up 8% from fall of 2021, still within the confines of the pandemic. So it's not just adult learners, it's also higher education. I mean, people want the flexibility. And so, Stephen, to answer your question more directly, I think we absolutely have to solve the synchronous engagement challenge that we have when we're trying to teach in a synchronous environment. It's a big challenge.
Mm-hmm.
There's really a lot of new learning models. If you think about it, it's fully online, it's hybrid, it's high flex. The traditional vision we have of the college student, say, who's a 4-year, goes off to school. Fortunately, many of us got to enjoy that, is not typical. I mean, folks have jobs, they have families, they've got all sorts of reasons where at least part of the time they need to be remote. So it's not just fully remote. or fully in person. It's that high flex model where some students might be in the classroom and others remote that really gives an opportunity to try to solve that challenge.
Cool. I want to give a shout out to Tom, Peter, Alicia, Pat, Kim, and everyone else who's already, put their names there in the chat. Again, I'd encourage you. I know we can kind of see, there's more than several dozen people in the room here with us. And so it'd be great if, tell us where you're dialing in from, or even just the company that you're coming from. It'd also be great, that first question there, have you heard from your learners? Do they want that hybrid option? If it is, throw a number 1 in there, just so that we can see, like, have you heard this in your, in your company as well? Going forward, so talking about learners, they there's hybrid that's happening. They say that they want to be in person, but we know that some of the data is telling us differently. What about the other side of the classroom? Instructors, so trainers, teachers, professors, etc. Again, as I've talked to people on the podcast, in the summit, etc., these are people who really, really want to get back in person, right? Like they've been salivating to this, but the reality is they also have said, look, we know that there's we're in the next normal, right? And so hybrid is the term that everyone has been putting on the table. Like David Kelly, who is the head of the Learning Guild, he was a guest on the podcast, I want to say like 2 months ago. In the Learning Guild's it's one of the biggest training professional communities in the world, 60,000 members or something like that. He says, well, in person is great. Like, we know that hybrid is the word we all have to answer right now. So, Billye, let me throw this over to you. Like, what are we seeing from the instructor perspective in this regard?
No, absolutely. We need to keep the instructors in mind. Look, the pandemic definitely proved that online learning could be done, but it hasn't yet shown the efficacy of it as positive. And the impact on instructors has been huge. But this doesn't mean we actually have to stop doing it. It just means we need to do it a little bit better, right? Increasing employment engagement is one of the top 3 challenges that is mentioned by L&D and HR professionals. In fact, 23% of employees actually leave because there's that lack of development and training opportunity. So it's not just something that we can ignore. However, we know that change is often slow and it's hard. And there was a recent study done by Fidelity Investments in the Chronicle of Higher Education study, which showed that it is hard, and 55% of university and college faculty members have seriously considered changing careers or retiring as a result of the experience that they've had through COVID.
Holy smokes, that's some stark stuff. Sorry, Phil, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It's a real problem. I mean, the higher education community really struggled to make that move online. The instructors and teachers, and it's the same in the corporate and vocational sector as well. What they really struggle with is getting students to engage in online. So Inside Higher Education ran a survey that said one of the biggest pain points, 71% of faculty members at higher ed institutions said increasing their students' engagement was one of their top priorities. So the idea that really class has come up with, and then partnered and integrated with OpenLMS, is to really drive better interaction. Learners with their content, learners with the instructors, learners with other learners, creating more collaboration in that synchronous environment. So I think we've got something really good to show. So let's get to what we're talking about here, Stephen.
Yeah, for sure. And right just before that, I'm going to call you out, Billye, because I want to, we've got all these great issues, but I want to get to it. But I want to just, call out Rakesh and Dan and Rakesh, Daniel, and Jana for telling us where you're from as well. Thanks for joining us. We're talking about these we're coming at it from lots of angles, right? We know that hybrid's an issue. We know that people want the classroom experience, but they also know that they've got to deliver online, but there's lots of options out there. We've got Teams, we've got Slack, we've got Zoom, we've got Big Blue Button, we've got all these different things. What sets class apart? Ed, like, give us, what's the high level there?
Well, Bill and I talked about doing this for over 20 years. Phil's been doing it as long. And if you think about the history of the LMS side, in the early 2000s, the LMS was a lot about supporting an in-person experience. And it was great to not have to get notes from friends or be able to, really get materials offline or submit materials. And that certainly involved to a asynchronous learning experience. And even with that great advance, what was missing is the interpersonal connection. The LMS provides that asynchronous experience, but absent going somewhere physically, the synchronous experience is really key. That ability to have connection and to be able to work in a peer environment. Zoom, Big Blue Button, the video conferencing, they made a step in that direction. I mean, this experience is certainly much better than all of us on a dial-in phone call. But this is a great experience for a webinar. It's a great experience in a small group for a video meeting. But to actually do teaching and learning requires a whole lot more than just this video presence.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, think about a physical classroom. What are the things that instructors are doing? They're taking attendance, they're giving out assignments, they're letting groups do presentations, they're doing hands-on training with employees, discussions, videos, whiteboards, breakout groups. All of these things are either not existing in these tools today, or they're really hard to do in a synchronous tool. So instructors or trainers that have been doing this for many years, that have built up, they know how to do this in front of a physical audience. We've made it impossible, or at least hard, to do the things that they're really good at. So what I love about what Class has done is they've taken some of those things that used to happen in a conference room training or in a classroom, and they've layered that on top of a synchronous tool so that it doesn't feel like a meeting, it actually feels like a classroom. And that's really the idea, is that we can make instructors more effective, and then therefore the students more engaged. So this opens up a lot of different opportunities to improve the experience. So it's really a completely different experience, and I can't actually wait to show everybody on the call what it looks like.
Awesome. Well, let's get to that. Okay, Billye, I mean, I don't think that I'm interested in waiting anymore. I don't think, the 25 people we've got in the room with us want to wait anymore. So why don't you pull up your screen? I know that you've got a demo waiting, and let's see what this thing looks like.
Awesome. Right, so here we are. This is Class. I'm so excited to show it to everybody today. You'll see that it looks very similar to Zoom, but as Phill mentioned, we've supercharged it with a lot of teaching and learning elements to make it feel like a physical classroom. One of the first things that you'll notice is our instructor podium. So I'm up here. And I always stay here. My students never lose sight of me in the grid of various video tiles. I'm always here, present and visible to them. Another thing that we've done is created something called front of room. So just like in a physical training room or a classroom, you've got that space in the front of the room, and that's up here. So you might have a co-host or a guest speaker, and you want to give them a little bit of a spotlight, but you could also use it for some of your learners. So maybe they've worked on something and they want to share it with the rest of the learners. You can simply move them to the front of class. You can use it for basically anybody who is actively speaking. So anyone who contributes, they come to the front of the class and they get that visibility. But if you don't need it, you can simply turn it off. Another feedback that we got from instructors was when you are in a physical classroom, everybody kind of takes a seat and they stay there. However, when you transition to online learning, something very bizarre happens and people just suddenly start shifting around, and it's really hard to keep track of your students that way. So what we've done at Class is enabled instructors to be able to freeze the seating chart, and you can do it in a variety of ways. You can do it by first name, by last name. One of my favorites is by hand raised, so you can actually organize your learners in the order by which they raise their hand. And this is great because you can be equitable in calling on them in the right way, but also, you don't lose anyone who's trying to engage or trying to contribute because, they're another 2 or 3 video screens away. One other thing that we've done, again, back to the element of making it easy for instructors to orchestrate these classes so that they can focus more on the engagement element, is this sidebar here. So you won't see this in Zoom or Teams or any of those other platforms. And this is really command central for the instructor. It makes it really easy for them to manage. Our participants page here basically shows you all of your students, who's there, who's absent. One of the great things is that because of our partnership with OpenLMS, your roster is synchronized, so your roster can be pulled in from OpenLMS and your students can be there. But you can also see if people have their hands up or have reactions, who's talking. These eyeballs are pretty cool. That means that Joe here has actually clicked out of class and he's looking at something else. So it would be a great opportunity as an instructor to say,
hold on, say that again. So
Yeah.
you're actually watching that dude
Yes.
Right. He's like popped over to YouTube to watch like the
Yeah,
footy hit. Yep.
well, yeah, or he's working on his emails or a report because he knows he's got to get it done by the end of the day. So he's not there. He's there just to check a box.
That's sneaky.
So I can kind of call Joe out and say, "Hey, Joe, what do you think about this?" And I can guarantee you those eyeballs will certainly pop away immediately. So it gives you that opportunity to monitor engagement. And speaking about monitor engagement, not only can you use that focus tracking, but also when we talk about our different types of seating charts, we have a participation seating chart. So what class does is actually measures how much students are participating and speaking in the classroom, and then it organizes them relative to the other students. So the ones that have these little red tiles mean that they're least engaged, they're least speaking and contributing. Yellow means average, and green means that they're most participating. So if you were to organize your seating chart like this, as an instructor, you can be really intentional about engaging some of those students and bringing some of those learners into the conversation, making sure that nobody is actually left behind.
Super cool. Many people don't know this, but I'm actually an adjunct instructor at American University in Washington, D.C. And like, just like, the organization and sort of the sorting of the students. And I love the hand raised one as well, so that you can kind of call on students. I'd love to hear, people who are participating right now, if you're in the chat, like if any of these make sense to you, I'd love for you to just call it out in the chat there and just tell us, which one of these, even just organizing students, makes a lot of sense to you, or if there's even something else that you'd like to see. For me, this platform it really just kind of pops off the screen. It doesn't look like Zoom at all to me personally. But what we've seen right now is, okay, we're bringing in the roster. We can kind of sort the students. How are we actually solving the engagement problem? Like what are we doing to actually keep them going, keep the instructor seamless, those kinds of things?
Absolutely. So when you are running an online course, it's really difficult to kind of orchestrate it. And so a lot of times instructors get busy with trying to pull in content or share their screen. When you share your screen, you lose all your students. You can't see them anymore. Or when you're trying to pull in content or send people links, you're actually sending your students away, right? If you send them the link or tell them to go to their LMS, you're sending them away. They're outside of this environment. So class, we've built in all of the teaching tools that an instructor would need. You can launch your agenda. And when you do that, it actually launches as a tab for the student. So each student gets their own version of this, and they can interact with that content however they want. They can download it and save it for later. You can load up assignments, quizzes and tests, surveys. Polling is great. You can check understanding and make a decision. Do I need to move on, or do I need to still spend a little bit more time on this topic? But I think where the rubber really hits the road is the fact that you can actually launch your learning management system, OpenLMS, within the platform. So you can use all of that great those tools and that content that you already have built in OpenLMS. The students open up their own instance of it, so they have their own course here and they can interact with that. But even better is that the students can also access class from within their course. So if you set up a class session, students just go to their course, they can simply click on the class icon and it will open them up and put them into this scenario.
Super cool. I want to encourage everyone, this, we're here, as a way to answer questions and sort of, put this on the table here. So if you do have a question, throw it in the chat there. We'll definitely either get to it in real time, or, we have a little bit of time at the end scheduled to do that as well. One thing that I'm really interested in seeing really is, for anybody who's heard me before, they know I'm a super data nerd. What is class tracking? Do instructors have any kind of real-time analytics that they can see? Is there a way that they can actually measure what's happening as the class is going along, or maybe like quickly post-class kind of thing?
Absolutely. So as I showed you already, during class, you can use your participation seating chart to gauge participation and engagement. You have your focus tracker as well. You have reactions that students do, so they can raise their hand or put up an icon or an emoji. So that's all real-time engagement. But the other thing that we've done is provided instructors with a lot of really cool class management tools. So you've got your class roster here. We automatically track attendance, so no more, doing roll call or trying to tick people's names off of a box. Probably my favorite, though, is our dashboard. And so that's where, after the class is finished, you're able to kind of really look at all of those analytics. Now, this is a demo site, so there isn't any live information in here, but basically the things that you'll get is, how much time did I speak as an instructor? How much time did my learners speak? How many times did they speak in that average duration? How many times were they raising their hands or giving feedback? So this is really helpful information for instructors. But you can also look at that at a detailed level by individual user. So again, who was there, what time they came in, what time they came out. It gives you an aggregate for that class that day, but also for the entire term or the entire learning course. So you can track how much time they had those googly eyes and they were looking at something else, how much time they were speaking, raising their hands, and all of that. So really, really rich data, and you can download all of that and really use it as a way to improve instructor and student engagement.
Are those analytics being shared between, either OpenLMS or an SIS or anything like that, or is this class specific?
At the moment, it's class specific, but because it's downloadable, it's really easy through APIs to integrate that information back and forth. So
okay, cool. I want to acknowledge Kristen. I see your question there. I want to kind of hold it for a little bit, but we'll answer it here in about 5 minutes when we get to the Q&A. If you'll give us a little bit of time. One thing I'm really interested in is, one of the big engagement problems, and I've experienced this with Zoom, as I'm teaching a class, is breakout rooms, right? So everybody uses it. It's peer-to-peer learning because we know that's super effective. It's the way that, so much learning gets done, and it's a tool that everyone uses. But has class solved for breakout rooms in a different way, or have you layered on top of Zoom in any way in that regard?
yeah. Absolutely. So again, being a mother of 3 kids, living in Melbourne, we had the longest lockdown of anyone, I think, in the world. And, I would watch my kids learning online, and they would go into these breakout rooms. And if you put 5, 7-year-olds in a breakout room, I can guarantee you no learning is happening there. But even for adult learners, they might have a question for the instructors. They have to pop out of the breakout room and go to the main classroom. Maybe the instructor just wants to check in on how people are doing. Same thing, they have to go in and out of breakout rooms, and it's really disruptive. So what class has done to solve for that is we've created a way that, hang on. So we have created a bird's eye view for instructors so that when you actually launch breakout rooms, as an instructor, you have visibility of all of those breakout rooms at the same time. So you can actually see what's happening in each of those breakout rooms. If you use your participant...
You have visibility into the breakout room as it's happening.
Yes. So it's like I am in a physical classroom and I'm overviewing all of my little breakout tables. I can see everything that's happening. I can also see, who's talking in those breakout rooms or who might have a question. The other really cool thing that I can do is I can actually launch different content. So you remember all of our teaching tools? I can launch different content to those breakout rooms. So no longer do you have to say, okay, here are your instructions, or here's a document you should take with you into the breakout rooms. You just put your learners in those breakout rooms, and I can say, okay, I'm going to launch a whiteboard to this breakout room, and the other breakout room I'm going to launch a video. This breakout room I'm going to launch an assignment. So you can really customize those peer-to-peer learning experiences without being really intrusive. Let the students kind of work together, but know that they have access to you when they need it.
For me, I'm like, this is a game changer for me. I would be happy with this one feature. So maybe you should just do class light with the breakout rooms. I'm not going to get into product development. We're kind of moving along in our time here in the webinar. I see, there's lots of different buttons to push here and stuff like that, but I kind of want to shift gears a little bit. If you wouldn't mind taking down your screen share.
Sure.
I want to ask you, Phill, in the tech world, everyone who's in the class, who's in the Zoom with us right now, they've heard this term partnership before, and a lot of times it's kind of just sort of fancy. Here's 2 companies, that we're going to do some sort of deal. What does partnership mean to OpenLMS working with class? Give us some depth around that.
Well, it's perfect timing because in typical synchronous learning, post-pandemic things, my kids are coming in the door right now, so you may hear some noise in the background. Very, very typical synchronous learning thing happening here. Yeah, partnership. We believe that partnership between class and Open LMS means something different, something definitely more than just a press release. The first thing that I want, and I see several of our clients are on the call tonight. First of all, class is completely integrated with Open LMS. So students can go back and forth between the platforms. The single sign-on, it actually passes a little bit more metadata around. You saw the roster gets shifted over. There's a lot of benefits just from a product integration perspective. That also includes support, right? So if you're an Open LMS client and you need support on the class integration or the class platform, you can come directly to your Open LMS support team in the same portal and get support on the platform. So just from a product and the experience of using it, it's a lot better experience if you're using both class and Open LMS together. Third, kind of logistically, procurement. We all love RFPs, all those types of things, right? Most of the clients of Open LMS can actually buy class directly from Open LMS with us as the Open LMS, with us as the vendor. So it means that you don't have to go, sometimes you don't have to go through extra procurement steps. We've got a great roadmap with class to build additional features for how we integrate passing data, passing back and forth was one of the things that was mentioned earlier. That's part of the roadmap. And maybe most interesting for the people on the call today is we're actually offering free production licenses for our Open LMS clients. So if you think this is interesting to you, you're using Open LMS today, you want to give it a spin. We want you to actually use it in a real world environment. We don't want to give you a little free trial that has, you can only have 5 students or a certain number of features or something. It's the full product. We'll integrate it with Open LMS for you. We want you to go use it in real life. And we think that if you do that, you're going to like it and you're going to want to buy it. So we're giving free production licenses out to our clients because we really want more and more of our clients to be able to use this.
Super cool. Ed, any final thoughts before sorry, Ed Miller, any thoughts that before I take us to Q&A?
I think Phill covered the partnership really well. I think, the underlying philosophy of class is not just to replicate the in-class experience, but really, in many cases, to make it better. Absent that ability to, you're a few feet away, the ability to truly understand engagement on an objective level, to understand if even you might have your own, internal unconscious biases. You're calling on the same person again and again because they happen to be like Ed Miller was as a kid, jumping up and down, raising his hand, in a loud way. You really start to see things like that. You understand what's going on, and we make it a better experience, not just replicating. So that's what I want to share.
Fantastic. So I want to open it up to some questions. First, Kristen, it's either, I apologize, it's probably Kirsten. I apologize. I misread the name. Of Melbourne Business School is asking whether or not class integrates with other LMSs. Patricia has answered it in the chat, but Billye or Ed, you want to just sort of give a verbal answer so we have it on the record?
I can take, we do. Our goal is to be a bit of Switzerland. We want to meet our clients where they are. So we're working with the major LMS vendors. Of course, Open LMS is our favorite. But that said, we're also working with a large number of corporate LMSs as well.
Awesome. Excellent. Alicia Gray also has a question. And the question is, how do the videos work to avoid lag when they are playing for learners inside the platform?
I'll take
you want to take that, Billye? Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't mind, I'm just going to share my screen again because I think it's even better for me to demonstrate that visually. So that's a great question, and it's a big problem that typically you have, because you either, if you want to play a video, you either have to share your screen, in which case you do have that latency, or you send your students a link to the video, but then you lose control of the playback. And there's also those 1 or 2 people that forget to put themselves on mute, and you have that horrible sound feedback. So because class actually launches content directly to the student's device, you are playing that sound, and that video is actually playing inherently from the student's device. But I can also, oops, I have breakout rooms open. I can also decide who controls the playback. So I can control the playback myself, or I can give that authority to the students. And again, it opens up as a tab. And once anyone pushes the play button, everyone automatically goes on mute. So you avoid some of those feedbacks and latency issues.
And
And we
it's
hear
so
Simon
important
Sinek talk
because if
about.
you think about
Mhm.
what we said earlier about keeping everyone in one place with the tabs, I mean, sending out a link and having someone go watch a YouTube is akin to having someone leave the classroom and go to another room to watch the video. And that's what happens, you know, every time you send someone a link in a typical video conferencing call, they're leaving your environment. Lots of things can distract you once you leave the environment. There's
Yeah.
email, there's Reddit, all sorts of things out there.
I don't know what Reddit. I've never heard of that thing. Anyway, again, if anyone else has a question on the call, observation, anything like that, throw it in the chat there. I have one personally. What about the experience in a responsive universe? So we know that many learners are going to experience their online class on a phone or on a tablet, etc. Is class built to be responsive in that way? Is there a performance issue? What's been the feedback there?
We support all the major platforms. So we have a web access, but in addition, we have apps for iOS, for Chrome, for Android, for Windows. So the idea is that we support multiple environments and allow people to come on in the platform of their choice, wherever it's effective to do a learning experience.
Okay, excellent. Billye, have you had any interactions with that as well? Do you have anything to add around that one?
Yeah, I think one of the latest developments that we have is being able to join through a web browser, and this has been game changing for a lot of corporates out there, where there might be some issues with downloading apps onto the device because there's a really tight IT security protocol or whatever. So we basically eliminated that through a web browser app, which is super, super cool. But I've got multiple devices and I use Class on all of them and they all work fabulously.
Can I just point out how great it is that we're in a day and age where you guys built the web version last and you built all
I know.
It's like it's like, hey, we're in 2022. It's not, hey, we built a web version. Eventually we'll get an iOS version. Eventually we'll get it's funny. It's gone the other direction now.
So, again, just a call out to everyone. If you do have a question, now's the time to ask it. We're going to be wrapping up here in 5. Okay, and great. Felipe, thank you so much. Can I host and join meetings on a mobile device? So, it's sort of a reverse of my question. Rather than the student experience, the instructor experience. Bill, you want to take that one? Or?
Yeah, so as a host or as an instructor, the best experience is through the app. That's what gives you all of those rich tools. And also when you think about a mobile device, the real estate is quite small. So you're not going to have a good experience on a tiny little mobile device, but tablets and things like that work well. But as a host, definitely you want to use the app so you can get all of those rich tools.
Yeah, I would venture to say that I think of my iPad as a mobile device, and it is probably one of the best experiences for class. I mean, it's just, it looks like learning of the future. And absolutely, if you think about an instructor, especially in a high flex environment where there may be some students in the classroom, so you're actually trying to manage a little bit of both, which is certainly a challenge. You can actually be walking around the room, because most instructors don't want to just sit there in one place at the podium when they're in the room and walk around with that iPad and actually be doing some of this functionality, deploying stuff simultaneously.
I personally, my feature request is, the one where you can just kind of like, oh, let me show you that on the screen. You need to be able to do that one right there. That's let's see. There's some great comments going through. Okay, so Kim, you're asking. I saw a couple of comments coming in about their actual experience with class, which is fantastic. So Peter, great question. So essentially you're saying in the breakout rooms, it's great that, the teacher or the instructor is kind of outside and you have this global view. The question is, I'll let you take this one, is, do they know that the teacher and the instructor has the ability to see them? Like, does it feel like Big Brother's kind of looking over your shoulder, or?
Well, I guess that's up to the instructor to let them in on the secret or not. But I think that the benefit from, the student side is, that the instructor isn't listening in, they're just observing what's happening, but they're there and they're available. So students can actually contact the instructor through chat and keep that open. It's much better than being in a breakout room and all of a sudden your instructor appears.
Like appears, yeah. That's the
I
big
mean,
one.
that's
That's like
way more
Wicked
disruptive
Witch of the
than
West. Yeah,
knowing
sure.
that somebody's there in the background if you need them, and they're there to be helpful.
Cool. Go ahead.
And relative to the monitoring, that function about people leaving windows and being monitored, or some of the other functionality we demoed today, most of it can be turned on and off. We understand that configuring things, especially since we serve this cross section of K-12, higher ed, and corporate L&D, need to be configured for the environment. And what works or is appropriate in one environment may not be in others. So the beauty is that it's all configurable by an admin to deploy the right learning experience.
Excellent. Thanks. So Allison Cooper's asking, can you share PowerPoint or docs when in breakout rooms? And I think we kind of answered that, but the answer is go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. You share anything.
Yeah.
So
Right,
students
cool.
can share their own screens while they're in breakout rooms. Instructors can obviously open up content as tabs for them as well. So yeah, there's lots of different.
Kim Musgrove has a really question. This is actually a really good one. I didn't think about it. How does this differ from a student entering into the classroom experience, right? Like a lot of times, I guess an instructor will send a Zoom link and then you click on that and it takes you into Zoom. What's that experience like in terms of a student being, sorry, I just completely lost my ability to talk, to know where the class is, how to get to it, and then actually enter it?
So there's a couple of different ways, which is what's so great about the partnership with Open LMS. So a student can simply go into their course. So they have, maybe Philosophy 101 or Leadership, whatever. But once they enter in that course, there is a schedule of the classes, the synchronous classes, and they can just simply look at the date and click on that link. The other great thing is that if you want to, the recordings of those classes can also be kept within that course. But the alternative way is that you can simply send them an invitation. Again, the roster of your student roster can be pulled from Open LMS. You can add them to your class roster. You can send them an invitation, and we have integration with email, which is a new feature that we've just came out with. But basically, they'll get the invitation, which will automatically populate into their Google Calendar or their iCal calendar or whatever.
One of the things I want to add to that on the LMS integration is remember that when a student comes in by clicking through their LMS, they come in as a student, right? So not only does the roster come over, but the roles come over as well. And that's important because then your teaching assistant or your co-host of the training session is already going to be aligned with the right role. So they're going to have the right level of control for it. So that integration of the roster or of the training list or attendee list, it's not just about getting the people in, it's about getting them in the right way.
That's a good observation. I love that we've now also been privy to 2 new feature releases, which is fantastic. I had no idea that we were going to be on the stage doing that. But another great question from Tom Grant is, will students need to download anything? And in order to make class work, is this layer, like, what kind of, I take this from sort of an accessibility standpoint where it's like, especially in Australia, there's a lot of remote learning, there's a lot of low bandwidth areas, those kinds of things. What's it take to get class working?
And that's fine because Phill was talking about, and as technologists, we sort of throw around words like web and app as if it's apparent to the world that apps are different. Apps are what needs to be downloaded. When we talk about our web interface, we're talking about going through Chrome and accessing it without having to download anything at all. And that's the experience. I mean, you need a browser, of course, but it's a browser access. The app's always going to be in any solution, a richer one, just like in Zoom, because there's a lot you can do building into an app based on leveraging individual operating systems and functionality. But that's exciting to have the browser-based experience because anytime, anywhere, and in any organization, you usually get things through the browser.
So final question for me, regardless of, let's just assume we have a setup that's already happened. It's on my machine, it's on my device, whatever. Billye, I want to take this one to you. Is if I'm an instructor, what's my uptime on this? Am I we see you clicking around and it seems pretty seamless. And this is this okay? It's an hour of training and I'm ready to go. Is it a couple of days? Like, how seamless is it to sort of just get moving on it?
Look, when I first started with class, I had to learn how to use it and how to create my own classes. And I'm not a really big. I'm in ed tech, but I'm not techie. If that's makes sense.
Kind of like Phil Miller there. Yeah, I know.
Yes, exactly. Both of us. And Ed Miller, probably. So it's very intuitive. It's very easy to use. However, when we do bring on a new customer, we make sure that we do the training and development for the instructors. It's usually we spread it over about 2 or 3 days, little bite-sized pieces, give them homework so they make sure that they're comfortable with it. But intuitively, it's very easy to use. In fact, I set up classes within 30 minutes. And the great thing is, class also has course templates. So any of the content that you know you're going to use multiple times, maybe across different instructors or across different terms, you can just simply pull in from the course template and it's already all set up for you.
Super cool. I think, we saw Patricia, she's got to bail for another meeting. I think it's time to put a pin in it here. This has been a great presentation. I really appreciate Billye and Ed, your time. Phil, thank you so much as well.
Yeah.
I want to end, but before everybody bails in the room, I want to make sure that as Phil said, we do have this sort of special moment right now where you can get a free instance basically of class for your institution if you're an OpenLS client. All features are free for 60 days. It's a complete integration. There's no cost. And so we're encouraging everybody right now, reach out to your OpenLMS account manager to get that started. It's a fairly, quick uptake process to get it up and running. And that is what we would hope you do after this conversation. Any final thoughts, Phil, Billye, or Ed on that?
No, it's been great to chat with everybody. Really excited about the opportunities for teaching and learning presented here. So pretty cool stuff. And thanks for being really interactive in the chat, all of you. It was great to chat with all of you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.